Maxwell Mortar prided himself on being the finest architect in the Human League of Masons, Carpenters, and frantically gesturing draftsmen. He could draft domes that floated on daylight, towers that twisted like ribbons, and spiral staircases so smooth even the king's pet Slinky could descend them in one graceful swoop. Maxwell's shelves sagged beneath awards shaped like miniature cathedrals. Yet, the letter that arrived one damp Wednesday morning, punctured in 8 places by suspiciously large thumbtacks, promised a project unlike any other. Dear Master Mortar, we, the Brobdingnagian Advisory Council, request your services. 3 of our constituents require new castles, each designed and decorated to extremely particular, occasionally contradictory, and possibly physics-defying specifications. Please present yourself at High Cloud Bluff tomorrow. Sunrise plus or minus a thunderclap. Cordially, Grenda Boulderboot. Council scribe below the signature. A postscript thundered in block letters. Failure to impress will result in you being used as a toothpick. Maxwell spent the night reinforcing the hinges on his courage. By dawn, he was trudging up the cliff path toward High Cloud Bluff, blueprint tubes strapped across his back like a knight's lance. The clouds hung low enough to goosebumps, and each gust of wind smelled faintly of cinnamon, which, Maxwell later learned, was simply how giants sweated. A booming voice met him at the summit. "You, the droid, scrawny!" Maxwell squinted up. Grenda Boulderboot, equal parts mountain and matron, loomed beside a cliff-edge desk carved out of an entire petrified redwood. She wore bifocals big enough to roast a turkey under, and a ballpoint pen tucked behind an ear the size of a stagecoach. "Maxwell Mortar, at your service, ma'am," he squeaked. Grenda sniffed. "We got 3 applicants. Blunderbore Bristleback, Dame Humbelina of the North Crags, and young Flint Firefist, all picky as a palace full of princesses. Impress 'em, and you'll leave alive and well paid. Disappoint 'em, and, well, you saw the postscript. 3 silhouettes lumbered out of the fog. First came Blunderbore Bristleback, shoulders that could host a cricket pitch, and a beard that produced its own weather system. "I want a castle, fit for a king," he boomed, "but also cozy, like a corner pub." Next minced Dame Humbelina, draped in velvet and pearls, every inch the aristocrat except half blind from leaning down to peek at human-sized objects. "Elegance," she trilled. "I crave elegance. Chandeliers that hum in a flat, and perhaps a moat of rosewater." Last, shuffled Flint Firefist, the teenage giant equivalent of a sulky 13-year-old. His knuckles glowed ember red, perpetually on the verge of setting his own pockets ablaze. "I want a game room," he muttered, "and a skate park, and a heroic lair, and secret passages, and lasers." Maxwell's knees attempted mutiny. Still, he forced out his business smile. "Giants of impeccable taste, allow me to propose a consultation schedule." "Start now," Blunderbore thundered. "Take notes, tiny man," Dame Humbelina added, flicking a pearl the size of a cannonball at him. It knocked open Maxwell's notebook. A handy gesture, if nearly fatal. Flint just grunted, setting a small patch of moss on fire. And so, the ordeal began. 1. Blunderbore's homely fortress. Blunderbore wanted grandeur visible from neighboring mountain ranges. 50-story battlements, catapult-ready turrets, and gates wide enough for migrating whales. Yet inside, he desired a snug feeling, by which he meant fireplaces large enough to roast whole forests, armchairs stuffed with cumulonimbus, and mugs capable of containing an average-sized lake of ale. Maxwell visited Blunderbore's current dwelling, a cave so cluttered it looked like a dragon's bad habit. He measured boulders, sketched stalactites, and avoided a nest of bats who considered him a snack-sized scarecrow. The giant watched him like a disappointed art critic, grumbling, "How make big feel small?" Maxwell, racking his brain, recalled his old professor's maxim: "Contrast is comfort. If you want cozy, create areas the occupant must lean into, focus upon." Even giants, he reasoned, need nooks. Thus Maxwell's first concept, the splendid hearthkeep. Exterior: formidable granite walls ribbed with obsidian stripes, showy enough for Blunderbore's ego. Interior: a labyrinth of stepped platforms, each descending toward a sunken hearth the size of a roundabout. The lower Blunderbore sat, the taller the walls would feel around him, producing psychological snugness. Built-in bookcases for maps and mead recipes would curve overhead, while arches borrowed warmth from stained glass windows, tinted to mimic a perpetual sunset. Blunderbore stroked his beard, dislodging 3 pigeons. "Might work," he conceded, "but can we add pub smell?" "Pub smell?" "That mix of spilled ale, wood smoke, and regret." Maxwell promised aromatherapy braziers. 2. Dame Humbelina's Song of Silk! Humbelina escorted Maxwell to her current abode, a half-collapsed marble gazebo perched atop a spire. The place wobbled dangerously, but she adored the open concept. Maxwell clung to railings as wind tried to file him under lost luggage. "My new castle must maintain this airy grace," she declared, lifting a pinky larger than Maxwell's torso. "Yet I tire of gusts ruining my soufflés. I desire walls that appear absent, and as I mentioned, a moat of rosewater. Not water, rosewater. I'm allergic to common dampness." "Understood," Maxwell gasped as his sketchpad attempted to launch itself into the valley. Humbelina's other demands tumbled out. Harps embedded in corridors so breezes produced music. Velvet clouds suspended from ceilings. A ballroom floor inlaid with moonbeams. And chandeliers that hummed in a flat to complement her singing voice. Apparently a seismic activity in local villages. Maxwell spent the afternoon calculating loads and resonance frequencies, and quietly panicking about Rosewater's corrosion properties. He envisioned a structure dubbed the Whispering Pavilion. A domed shell of translucent quartzite panels hung from a skeletal titanium lattice. During daylight, the panels would glow milk-white. By night, they'd become invisible, revealing starlight while blocking drafts. Beneath, capillary channels would circulate rosewater through a moat that doubled as an evaporative cooling system, scenting the air with perpetual perfume. For the humming chandeliers, Maxwell imagined glass fiber organs tuned via adjustable crystal weights. Every chandelier would be a literal wind instrument. Humming could be modulated to stay precisely in a flat, using a clockwork barometer. Humbelina dabbed her eyes with a silk kerchief, the size of a shipping sail. "It sounds exquisite," she cooed. "Though I should like the harps to be gold, obviously, and occasionally they must play swing rhythm." Maxwell gulped. "Naturally." 3. Flint, Fire Fists, Fortress of Cool. Finally, Maxwell faced Flint, who occupied a shoddy lean-to, built against a magma vent, because, quote, "it looks edgy." Flint paced while spitting sparks. "I want something no one's seen before," he snarled. "I want secret lairs within secret lairs. I want rails to grind on, foam pits, a lava jacuzzi, holographic graffiti walls, dragon bone decor, laser tag corridors, and, oh, a roof I can skateboard down, then launch off into a canyon." Maxwell committed each improbable request to paper, telling himself that adolescence, even scaled up, could be reasoned with. He retreated to his temporary studio, a commandeered goat shed at Mountain Base, and brewed a cauldron of coffee strong enough to peel paint. Blueprints multiplied like startled rabbits. He calculated structural arcs, airflow vectors, scent diffusion patterns, and the tensile limits of gold harp strings. Days blurred. Maxwell's desk disappeared under scrolls. Outside, goats gossiped about the mad human shouting things like, "No! More rosewater gutters! And where do I hide the lava jacuzzi drain?" By week's end, he returned to High Cloud Bluff, armed with 3 mahogany cases of scale models. The presentations. Blunderbore arrived first, shaking the cliff with each footfall. Maxwell unveiled a model of splendid hearthkeep. Granite exterior flecked with iron. Interior terraces curling around a sunken hearth, where a gummy bear, standing in for Blunderbore, reclined on a matchbox sofa. "Look," Maxwell explained, "when you sit here, you'll be surrounded by warm stone. Aromatic braziers hidden in the cornices will waft cedar, charcoal, and stale barley. Classic tavern bouquet. For grandeur, see these ramparts. Watch." He flicked a lever. Miniature siege engines popped up. Guests approach in awe, but inside you feel sheltered. Blunderbore peered, eyes crossing. "What about beard clearance?" Maxwell tapped the vaulted ceilings. 80-foot headspace. Enough for zeppelins. Blunderbore's grin split a passing cloud. "Acceptable!" He sealed the deal by slapping Maxwell's back, launching him 10 feet forward. Next, Dame Humbelina glided in, trailing perfume like fog. Maxwell presented the Whispering Pavilion, a pearl-white dome swirling with glass ribs, encircled by a pale pink moat. He set a clockwork fan by the model. Breeze gusted over miniature harps, producing an ethereal chord in a flat. Hidden bellows shifted tempo to something vaguely swing. Humbelina clasped her hands. "Delicious! But can the chandeliers do tap dance rhythms as well?" "Tappable rhythms, definitely," Maxwell promised, hoping to invent the technology before construction ended. Flint Firefists slouched in last, earphones forged of thunderheads. Maxwell revealed the Phoenix Spire, a jagged basalt tower wrapped in half-pipe terraces. He pressed a button. LEDs flared. Tiny skateboarders, carved from toothpicks, whizzed along magnetic tracks. A ping-pong ball of red dye burbled in a model lava pit. "Secret passages," Maxwell narrated. "Open when you solve puzzles engraved on dragonbone panels. A stealth elevator runs to a panoramic launching ramp, so you can ollie into the sky. And the walls are made of obsidian fibers, shatterproof, but cool-looking." Flint's embers brightened. "Do the lasers work?" "Scaled up, yes. Safety spells included." Flint nodded, pretending nonchalance. "Fine. But the graffiti wall must auto-refresh daily, so my art always has blank space." "Easy." Maxwell lied. The catch. Maxwell had triumphed, or so he thought. Grenda Boulderboot summoned him that evening. Her expression hovered between sympathetic aunt and executioner, waiting for paperwork. "Good news," she said. "They all want you." "Bad news. They want castles simultaneously, within 3 months, which means triple labor, triple materials, triple migraines. And," she slid across a smaller parchment, "they refuse to share marble quarries, timber rights, or even stonemasons. Giants are territorial that way." Maxwell's stomach performed calculus. Even with overtime, 3 months for 3 castles of impossible scale defied reason, and building codes. But the alternative might involve becoming a toothpick, or at best, a novelty bookmark. He begged for an extension. Grenda shrugged. "Convince them yourselves." Diplomacy. By miniature furniture, Maxwell requested separate meetings. First, he approached Blunderbore with a keg of artisan ale, aged 4 hours just brewed, and explained that if Humbelina's harpsmiths and Flint's lasersmiths weren't allowed to collaborate, all projects would stall. Blunderbore, mid-chug, belched seismic approval. "Me like fast. Shareman, but want credit." Next, Maxwell convinced Humbelina that lending her gold wire to Flint's graffiti wall would create a charitable reputation. She warmed to the idea of being called patroness of youthful expression. Finally, Maxwell told Flint that if he allowed Blunderbore's stonemasons to shape his half-pipes, they could embed volcanic vents for extra speed. Flint's eyes sparkled like welding torches. Sick! Thus partial cooperation emerged, though none would admit it in daylight. The construction montage. If one stood on a neighboring ridge during the next 3 months, one would witness the greatest choreography of cranes, pulleys, and frantic humans the kingdom had ever seen. Maxwell drafted day and night, delegating teams like a conductor on 12 espressos. He commissioned floating scaffolds, hot air balloons tethered to winches, to allow workers to adjust ceilings tall as thunderstorms. He hired dwarven tunnelers for Flint's secret passages. Dwarves, being naturally secretive, found the work therapeutic. He imported enchanted quartz that refracted moonlight for Humbelina's ballroom, supported by gnome-engineered gyroscopes to keep it level during gusts. Blunderbore's hearth alone consumed an entire forest of driftwood, and that was just for the kindling test. Aromatherapy braziers proved trickier. The prototype produced scent notes of wet goat, until Maxwell substituted cedar shavings. Laser corridors for Flint threatened to blind carpenters, so Maxwell installed crystals that refracted beams harmlessly upward, unless triggered by Flint's fingerprint, or rather, flame print. The graffiti wall used enchanted chalk, evolving into new pigments at sunrise. Occasionally it malfunctioned, splattering existential haikus on innocent scaffolding. The Rosewater moat required damming 5 rivers and convincing dryads to part with petals by promising weekly poetry recitals. The moat smelled divine, but attracted swarms of lovesick bees. Maxwell introduced lavender decoys. The bees fell for the ruse, relocating their romance. Throughout, giants asked random surprising questions. Blunderbore, could the chairs masseuse my hamstrings? Humbelina, can the moonbeam floor also shine like rose gold during full moon? Flint, what if I want the roof ramp to double as a guitar solo? Maxwell answered yes, then unlocked additional pages on his abacus of headaches. Critical calamity. 2 weeks before deadline, a storm rolled in. Lightning, hailstones the size of wagon wheels, winds that uprooted anchored mountains. Splendid Hearthkeep's south wall cracked. Whispering Pavilion's Rosewater moat overflowed, warping harp strings. Phoenix Spire's half-pipe terrace sheared off like a spoonful of ice cream. Blunderbore howled. Humbelina fainted theatrically. Flint punched the air so hard the atmosphere caught fire. Maxwell, soaked to the marrow, gathered them beneath a makeshift tent, actually Humbelina's parasol. We still have time, he declared, voice wobbling. But only if we all help, starting now. Giants exchanged looks. Helping with construction was beneath aristocratic toenail clipping. Yet dire circumstances, and Maxwell's 1,000-yard desperation stare, swayed them. Thus began the giant workdays. Blunderbore lifted collapsed walls like Lego bricks, repositioning them while humans bolted plates. Humbelina clasped roof beams between jewel-tipped fingers, holding them steady so gnomes could weld joints. Flint, supervising a magma flow redirected through basalt channels, fused cracked stone with molten seams. Effectively giant-sized solder, Maxwell orchestrated, sprinting atop shoulders, barking orders through a megaphone fashioned from a traffic cone. He calculated structural stress in chalk over Flint's knuckles mid-work. He tuned harps by flinging pebbles, each a half-ton, at Humbelina's direction. He swapped out braziers soaked by storm for new ones filled with quick-drying pine resin-scented hearth and ale. The final night, exhausted humans and giants collapsed around campfires. Maxwell stared at the 3 silhouettes: Granite Keep, Quartz Pavilion, Obsidian Spire. Outlined by moonlight, he allowed himself 8 minutes of sleep. The grand unveiling deadline dawned bright and suspiciously calm. Delegations from neighboring kingdoms arrived, expecting carnage, gossip, and possibly a sale on slightly used architects. Instead, they beheld something miraculous. Splendid Hearthkeep glowed amber, its terraces steaming with cedar smoke. Blunderbore strode onto his battlements and bellowed a toast so loud the moat rippled 3 castles away. Whispering pavilions shimmered like morning mist, each translucent panel catching sunbeams. Breezes strummed corridor harps, drifting swing rhythms across rosewater. Humbelina twirled in her ballroom. Every pirouette triggered moonbeam inlays that blushed rose gold. Phoenix Spire crackled with youthful energy. Flint soared down the roof ramp, skateboard ablaze, launching into a flip that landed him inside a laser corridor. Lasers flickered, targets burst like fireworks, graffiti refreshed to spell Flint rules in pyrotechnic script. The audience erupted in cheers and ducked for cover. Even Grenda Boulder Boot wiped a sentimental tear. Look at that. No toothpicks today. The after-party aftermath celebrations spanned 3 days. Blunderbore hosted a banquet featuring a stew of hypothetical animals, whatever gargled in the cauldron first. Thanks to Maxwell's aromatherapy system, the entire keep smelled exactly like a Friday night pub, complete with intangible essence of spilled secrets. Humbelina staged an opera, her voice harmonizing with humming chandeliers. The resonance cracked a distant iceberg, but critics called it groundbreaking in every sense. Flint organized an extreme sports tournament. Contestants rode fireproof boards down the spire's ramps through loops of quantum graffiti, and for winners, an express lava jacuzzi soak. Nobody slept. Everyone gained mild tinnitus. Maxwell, seated on a velvet knoll between giants' feet, finally relaxed. 3 castles stood, each contradiction resolved into charm, and no one had brandished him as dental equipment. Epilogue came when the Brobdingnagian Advisory Council offered him the newly formed role of chief architect of unreasonable projects. Lifetime tenure, hazard pay, unlimited coffee, and a clause. He could refuse any commission involving carnivorous gardens or time travel. A lesson from the previous chief, apparently still lost in Tuesday. Maxwell accepted, conditionally. Only, he said, if my new office has windows overlooking all 3 castles, I'd hate to forget which miracle belonged to which giant. Grenda laughed her landslide laugh. Done. But watch out. Next year there's a pair of frost giants who want an igloo with central heating. Maxwell smiled, fishing a fresh sketchpad from his satchel. Contrast, he whispered to himself, is comfort. And somewhere far below, the kingdom's goats sighed in resignation, already missing the quiet life before architecture looked upward and decided to wrestle the clouds.